Hi, it's Kerry Artak, Wicked Stocks, bringing you an update on Bitcoin. Just so you know, I did record this video on Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. This is a weekly bar chart. I'll be using the same chart throughout this brief video. This is just to update you on what I'm thinking and where the key levels are in terms of support, trend identification. We could walk back through time, and that probably is useful. If we have the sequence, and this is a 2020 low, this is the November 21 high, which, was a good high from November 21 until we took it out in March of, for almost, well, a 2.5 year high. And you have these extremes. So when we took this previous all-time high out, back in about a year ago, actually, March of 24, when we began to take that out and violate it and push on to new highs, and that didn't last long, we fell away again, but we did ultimately push through again, and I'll get to that in a moment. But when that occurs, and there is no precedent for price points, in other words, you're at an all-time high, but you have these two extreme waves, these two extreme points. I always like to throw out the 100% swing, which is very simple math. You take the November 21 high and you subtract, the November 22 low, and then you flip that on its head as a full swing to the upside. It's an exhaustion point oftentimes in the market. It's a good targeting mechanism, and I think it's still a case to be made. 122,433 as a longer term objective that still may be realized this year. And so if we continue moving forward through time, we have what was also, I think, an even more significant event was the violation of what is a really kind of a 5-year channel top. And that was just November of last year. 6 months ago, we pushed through a 5-year channel top. If you're a follower of other analysis of mine, for instance, that Apple tested its 5-year channel top back in December and has since fallen away. The S&P 500 has yet to test its 5-year channel top. It's well above the market in the 6,400, 6,500 area. But Bitcoin pushed through its 5-year channel top back in November. This was sort of a kind of a new paradigm where it actually underscored the likelihood of reaching this full wave count. And that still remains in effect. I still see 122,433 as a longer term objective above not only this former rising channel top, which we've certainly been testing for the last month and a half, but there's also this new rising trend defining 1/3 speed line. And, I love using speed lines, especially for steep moves, as this one has been, where channel structures are just so steep. I like to use the speed line. It's a softer angle. It's a legitimate line study. You have to actually do some work. Most systems don't have an automatic, way of creating these. But really, I can quickly just tell you how to do this. You're taking the low from November 22. And then once the high is in, which was January of this year of 109,192, and you begin to fall away from it, you can construct a 1/3 speed line. And let me put a cursor up here with X hairs, and just to show you that. So if I come down here to the trend line right here, this is the 1/3 pullback. In other words, this is the extreme from the November 22 low against that recent January high. If you go 33.3% down from that, that'll take you right to this line here. Now, it should be 77,987. And so really then what you do is you draw a trend line that projects from the low, and it actually intersects exactly the 1/3 pullback point at 77,987 in the time frame in which the high was placed. And that is also a trend defining line study. In other words, the rule of thumb with speed line analysis is as long as you are still above the 1/3 speed line, the trend remains bullish. And while we've certainly slipped below both the channel top and the speed line over the last few weeks, we keep closing above them on a week by week basis. And that is the critical development. As long as you continue closing above these line studies, the trend remains bullish. And we're expecting ultimately 122,433 in the months ahead. Now, if we do close this week, for instance, and it doesn't look likely, we're in Wednesday already, 82,965 to 83,421. 82,965 is the rising one-third speed line. 83,421 is that former long-term 5-year channel top. This is your base of support to buy into. As I mentioned in recent videos, I've been updating Bitcoin periodically, and I've been mentioning this area as a solid zone of support that as long as we're above it, I don't expect the Bitcoin to continue falling. This is an area that can capture selling pressures, quite possibly through the rest of the year. And, I'll get to from here to the upside in a moment, but let's cover the downside. That what if we do close this week below 82,965? Then yes, within a matter, and this is a weekly chart, within a matter of 1 to 2 months, this could be a 3 to 5 week sell-off where we fall back into this, the 21 high of 68,964. And then you've got a 3/8 downside Fibonacci. So remember before I mentioned, and I'll put the cursors back again, I mentioned how this is a 1/3 level. The 3/8, which is a Fibonacci level, is 73,396, and it actually correlates pretty well with this high here from March of 24 of 73,791. So in short, if we close below 82,965, I expect within 1 to 2 months, this 68,964 to 73,396 area. This can be a trouble spot, but honestly, with respect to the speed line analysis and the fact that we would have closed back below a long-term 5-year channel structure, I think that has longer-term implications to the downside. And with speed line analysis, when you close below the rising 1/3 speed line, you're then anticipating a rising 2/3 speed line. And, I can just quickly sort of show that this green line is the rising 2/3 speed line. This green line is the rising, the 1/3 pullback is this green line. The 2/3 pullback is this green line. In other words, we would construct, and I actually show this exactly, we construct a speed line. This is the 2/3 speed line that we would anticipate. And let me actually just cut to the chase and jump to that chart. Wrong chart. This is the chart. So if we close below 82,295, I see a longer term high. And now there's no certainties, of course, but I would begin, my videos would reflect the fact that I think the high is in probably for the rest of the year, and that we should continue eroding into what is now 48,722 and climbing. This makes sense to me. You've got the makings here of a possible head and shoulders top. And while the upper part of that left shoulder may well, as I mentioned in the previous slide, contain selling pressures near term, and I'll take us back there, can contain selling pressures near term. In other words, we can bottom out here for a month or two and rally back into this significant low 80,000 area, although that's not assured. I think, what is likely is we just continue moving south. Once you break below this high area, the old rule of thumb with consolidation patterns is you tend to fall all the way to the base of that previous consolidation pattern. Hence, you've got this potential long-term head and shoulders top. None of this is a reality, in my opinion, and from my perspective, unless we close this week below 82,295. So I don't want you to think that I'm bearish Bitcoin. I am bearish Bitcoin into later year if we close below 82,295, in which case I would expect the upper 40,000 area and climbing through time. And I'll provide updates on this as we move through time. So let's just assume for the sake of this graph, and I think there's a very good case to be made, that we are in a bottoming process right now with Bitcoin. Looking back later this year, we will have seen that was the actual low. And let's move through the charts here. I'm going to zoom in. So really what I'm doing is I'm zooming in this area right here, moving on to this chart, and you can see near term. So I've already shown that 82,295 long-term speed line is your base of support, and we're pretty much just above it. We keep closing above on a week by week basis. We have a near term challenge at 91,056, which is this former classic channel bottom. And we have a new short term, near term descending channel top at 92,650. This range is narrowing into next week. It becomes kind of a single point in the 91,400, 91,200 area. This can 91,056 to 92,650 contain buying really into April activity, and from here we can fall back into the low 80,000 area. We could fill this area out for the next few weeks, but the of the two, it is likelier we will close above 92,650 because of its near-term status, rather than closing below, that 82,965, because this is a speed line that goes back some 2 years plus. And so there you have it. The likelihood is that we'll continue onward and upward into later year. And the signal for that, not necessarily that. So you've got this. I'm presenting this for those of you who trade Bitcoin regularly. You're looking, where can we top out into later April? This is the area we can do so. I'm going to jump to the next slide here and show you that, well, there is an extreme channel top. I actually erased it for whatever reason. But this for me is our upward pivot point. So it is a bit stair step. You've got 92,650 is this descending channel top here that correlates with the last slide with this former channel bottom at 91,056. So I'm kind of rounding up for the sake of this illustration. If we can close above 92,650, and that drops to 91,855 next week. If we can close above this near-term channel top, then we have kind of a 2 to 3 week rally to 102,034. And that actually correlates, and this is the last slide I'm going to show. I don't like to go past 10 minutes on any video, and we've already done it, but I think this is an important point to make. And this is my upside bullish continuation breakout area as we move into the third quarter, really. 96,745 is a static level. It is a 5/8 upside Fibonacci from that January high against that recent low from several weeks ago. And what I like about that is it correlates over the next, on the week of May 5th, which is about 5 weeks from now. And so the timing could be perfect. For instance, if we do close this week, and I don't see that happening, but say next week above 91,855, that is the week of March 31st, then we've got a 2 to 3 week rally into this narrowing zone of resistance that is presently 96,745 to 102,034. They all come together pretty much around 97,300 the week of May 5th. This will be our upward continuation point into later year. Until then, once again, we can top out here on a monthly basis and collapse back. So the way I would characterize the market is, yes, we're still bullish long-term above 82,965. This 122,433 area is still in reach later this year. That becomes clarified, confirmed with a settlement above this descending channel top at 102,034. Until then, you can make a really strong case that our midterm outlook, which is to say, really through the second quarter or well into the second quarter, is one of a two-sided framework where you can top out in the upper 90,000, low 100,000 area on a monthly basis and fall back into the low to mid 80,000 area and fill this wedge out for the next couple, 2-3 months before the market tips its hand in the respective direction. Odds favor it being above 102,034 just because of this long-term line study. But as I said earlier, if we close below this long-term line study, I think we've got a good high for the year, and this thing just continues eroding in value into what would really be more like a low 50,000 area within 3 to 5 months. There you have it. Almost 14 minutes. I'm going to leave it at that for this particular Wicked Stocks update on Bitcoin. You have a great day.